So good evening. I'm Jamaica Jones, Program Coordinator with the University of Louisville Women's Center. And I want to welcome you to our fourth annual Grace Hopper Celebration of Women in STEM. Tonight, we'll be highlighting and honoring women's accomplishments in STEM, but also bringing awareness to the realities and the unfortunate barriers that are still being faced today. By connecting together, we will learn some new skills and tips to overall work together to dismantle these barriers. This year, for the first time, we are coming together virtually. So if you're joining us from Kentucky, put a heart emoji in the chat or reaction. And if you're joining us from somewhere else, put a thumbs up emoji in the chat or reaction. We are so happy to have you join us this year. Let's see where some folks are coming in from. Okay. So today's flow of the program, obviously right now we're doing our welcome. We'll be going over some guidelines for those who may not be as familiar with teams. We will have a little fun to see what do you know about women in STEM. We'll hear from our phenomenal keynote speaker, Keturah Jenkins. We will be watching a brief video from the Grace Hopper Celebration of Women in Computing Conference and have a brief discussion. And we will have some amazing women from various levels in their careers in STEM for a panel and followed with a Q&A, which will also include some of the questions that you had submitted during registration. And during our closing is when we'll be giving out some great prizes and we will be doing our group photo. So make sure you get your beautiful smiles ready for that. So to ensure an engaging and smooth program for all, we will ask that everyone please keep your cameras off and your mics muted during the program. And make sure you show some love for our speakers and volunteers. We want you to actively engage with us, so please use the chat for any questions, comments, or reactions during the program. And this program will be recorded and posted on our Women's Center YouTube channel. And during the Q&A at the end of the panel, you will have a chance to ask any questions by either typing it in the chat, and we'll also have an opportunity for some of you to raise your hand and verbally ask your questions. But we will also include those who were already submitted during the registration. And at the end, of course, your cameras will be turned on then, so you get a chance to see everybody who's with us and take a group photo to commemorate our program. So please be patient as we make our way through, because we just know with everything being virtual, sometimes things happen. Today's program is brought to you by the University of Louisville Women's Center, Humana, Louisville Speed School of Engineering, Louisville College of Business, and Louisville Metro Office for Women. We are so excited to have some awesome prizes for you guys this year that will be given at the end of the program, and you must be present to win. We have a gift basket of goodies that was donated by Louisville Speed School of Engineering, and the winner will be picking this up from Speed School. Rocket Women has graciously offered 2 student tickets worth $130 to attend their Women in Technology Conference May 18th through 19th and won 1-year Rocket Women Commender membership with perks including 1 free ticket to all virtual events, discounted live tickets, and networking events, which is also worth $130. So thank you to all of our amazing sponsors for their continuous support of this program. And before we get to talking to Grace Hopper, I do definitely want to give a huge shout out to Adrienne Jones and Candace Boynes from Humana. They have been very integral as members of the planning committee for this program we'll be experiencing today. So definitely show them some love in the chat, because I could have not done this program without them. So the namesake of this event, Grace Hopper, was a computer engineer, pioneer, and naval officer. She received a master's degree and PhD in mathematics from Yale. She was the first 3 modern programmers and best known for her trailblazing contributions to the development of computer languages. She came of age at a time of unusual opportunity for women. A relatively high number of women were receiving doctorates in the 1920s and 30s, numbers that would not be matched again until the 80s. World War II created opportunities for women to enter the workforce in great numbers. Nonetheless, her success in a male-dominated field and in male-dominated organizations, including the U.S. Navy, was exceptional. Some highlights, and I'm sure there's many we could talk about just for her today, include helping to develop the Mark II and Mark III computers. She was the first to refer to a computer problem as a bug and to speak of debugging a computer when finding a large moth inside of one while taking it apart. In 1991, President George Bush awarded Hopper for the National Medal of Technology, the nation's highest technology award, and she was the first woman to be so honored as an individual. And in 2016, she was posthumously received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor in recognition of her remarkable contributions to the field of computer science. We honor Grace Hopper, her contributions in being a trailblazing women in STEM. So show Grace some love in the chat. And next, we will have Candace joining us to see how much you know about women in STEM.
These are his people. Walter, did you know Geico could save you hundreds on car insurance and a whole lot more? So what are you waiting for? World's strongest man, Martins Litzis, to help you break down boxes.
All right, are you able to hear me now?
Yeah, much better.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I was going, I can't hear anyone. Thank you so much. Apologies for the technical difficulties, everyone out there. But the answer is 20. So if you answered, you're in that 19 percentile of folks that answered. The correct answer was 20. All right. Our next question. Oh, wait, it says 20. It says 14. So I think this is a typo, but the correct answer is 20. There we go. Let's get through those. Okay. And the bonus question, who was the first woman to win the Nobel Prize? And that answer is Marie Curie was the first woman laureate in 1903 in physics. Not my favorite subject, but I was a science geek, and so I liked some things, but not physics. All right, let's move to the next one.
All right.
Okay. You were offered a job in a STEM field, which starting salary do you accept? 91,360, 76,820. Which of those? This is a far cry from a far gap in between. I think we have somebody that keeps coming off of mute. There we go. All righty. Can you all still hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Thank you. The gap here is significant when we think about the average earnings between men and women's salaries. So when we go out there to ask for that increase, make sure you ask and for enough. Women tend to sometimes, we as women tend to not ask for what we want, and we should always ask for what we want. Okay, the next question. Who am I? Oh, there we go. I love math, and growing up, I would count everything. I started high school when I was just 10 years old, began college at 15, and graduated at 18. I'm a mathematician who calculated the trajectories of Apollo 11, the mission which enabled man to take his first steps on the moon. Who am I? And I worked for NASA for more than 30 years, retiring in 1986. And the answer here is Katherine Johnson. Is anyone familiar out there with Katherine Johnson? If not, please look her up. She is a very, very interesting lady. Yes. Next question. On average, how many CEOs/board members are in the STEM field are women? %, 4.6%, 45.3%, or 12.2%. All right. And the answer here can they see that, Jamika? Can they see the answer?
Yes, majority of them, almost 70%, 63, have gotten the correct answer.
Yep. So that's 12.2%. Is that correct? Yeah. All right. Okay. So I will turn this back over. Thank you all for participating and putting up with our technical difficulties. And Jamika will now take over and introduce our special keynote.
Hey, thanks, Candace. And this is Adrienne. I'll go ahead and introduce Keturah. So I'm so happy to introduce Keturah as our keynote speaker. And she is the IT Director of Enterprise Transformation at Humana, where her team equips the organization to work differently with more contemporary tools and processes to meet business needs. Prior to her role at Humana, she spent 17 years in various roles ranging from information technology to quality to leadership development across a variety of industries and geographic locations. In addition, Keturah is a certified executive coach and is passionate about helping people find their purpose through mentoring, individual coaching, or her book, Whose Life Is This Anyway? She has also facilitated workshops for private companies as well as industry conferences on 4 continents. Personally, Keturah enjoys time with her husband and 2 children, loves exploring other cultures, and is an active volunteer in her community through her church. And now, go ahead and hand it over to Keturah.
Coming off that mute button. Thanks a lot, Adrienne. I appreciate that. Appreciate the introduction. I'm super excited to be here with you all today. I know this is a bit different, us being virtual and then us have cameras off. So, I'm gonna do my best here to keep the energy up, because this is definitely a subject that I'm passionate about. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my career path for a couple of reasons. Excuse me. The first reason I'm going to talk to you about my career path is sometimes when we think of this whole concept of women in STEM, I think we think of a very, very narrow way of kind of what does we mean by technology, or how technical do you have to be in order to be in it. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my roles because they tend to be a bit different. And then secondly, we sometimes think about things like a career path as a straight arrow, when in fact it is more curvy. And even sometimes when we look back, it looks kind of straight. But so I'm going to share with you a little bit about the curves in my career as well. And then lastly, as I was putting this together, I started to think about what are some of the learnings that I had in each of the roles that might be helpful for you all as well. So with that, let's go to my slide, if you would bring that up for me, Jamaica. And I'm going to start to talk through the roles. Now, feel free, as I give some of the learnings, et cetera, if this is something that resonates with you, go ahead and show me some of those reactions so I know where to start. All right, so I started my career in an IT leadership program. What that meant was it was a program designed for students fresh out of college, and really putting them on an IT track, but more of the leadership versus technical. And industry really took a turn here because historically, people were getting progressed technically, and then they were going into leaders. But just because you have strong technical skills doesn't mean you have strong leadership skills. So I was in this program, and what I learned in this 2-year program was speed and adaptability, because this program was a 2-year program and you did 4 rotations. So in those 2 years, you basically rotated every 6 months, and you had to come in, and many times you had to move cities because we were going through different cities, come in, learn a new business, learn a project, complete that project in 6 months, and then be out. So it's not a whole lot of time to say, oh, this person won't meet with me, or I don't understand the technology. You really had to kind of come up to speed pretty quickly and then be adaptable to do whatever it takes to get it done. So that's kind of what I learned in that first one. From there, I went on to be an IT security leader, which may be a bit curious, right? Because I'm still relatively early in my career. But I decided, I was working for a pretty big company, a Fortune 50 company, but they had smaller divisions. So I went and worked at one of the smaller divisions, because when you work at kind of smaller companies, you tend to be able to have a larger influence because there's not quite as many people. And quite frankly, it's not as detrimental if something goes wrong, because it's a lot less complex of a system. So I was the IT security leader there because I knew it was important at some point in my career early on to get depth in something. So even if you think of, you got to have something to kind of hang your hat on, because if not, you can speak in theory, but how do you figure out somewhere to go deep? And here's the thing, it doesn't even matter if that's the way that you decide to stay in a deep area. But the thought is kind of, where do I want to go deep? So I chose security because at the time it was gaining steam and momentum. And plus, quite frankly, it was an area that I was interested in. So I did that for a while. And then I went into a 6 Sigma black belt role. So as many of you know, black belt, it's all around kind of quality and process control. It started in manufacturing, but also can be applied to really any process. And at the time, the company I was with, black belt was kind of where you go. It was kind of like almost a graduate degree kind of perspective. And so I knew it was something that I wanted to do. But in this role, I learned about leading through influence, because while I had these projects to complete in order to get my certification, I wasn't in many times doing all the work. There were other people I was depending on, and it may or may have not have been for them directly. So they were kind of helping me out. So how do I lead through influence and kind of help them do that? And let me explain something to you. You will always have to lead through influence, because even now that I have a team, it's still about influencing, whether my team or my peers or even influencing up. So that one was critical to me so far. Then after that 6 Sigma black belt, I went into my first official people report to you job, which was a business intelligence leader. So controlling a lot of the systems that did our reporting. Now, Here's what's interesting about this one. So I get my leadership role, right? I'm feeling good about life. My niece, we're having a conversation, and she's like a middle schooler. So she sits down and she said, okay, Auntie, well, what do you do? So I explained to her, like, here are all the systems that my team owns, and these are the things that we do around reporting for the business. And she looks at me only the way a middle schooler can and says, okay, but that's what your team does. What do you do? To which I didn't really have a good answer. But, Mint, thanks for that. Yeah. So, but I didn't really have a good answer. But what ended up happening, she's a middle schooler, right? So she keeps going on. And I started thinking about that. And then I started to understand, what is the value that I bring as a leader? Because when I'm no longer physically doing the work, what value is that? And how can I make sure I'm adding that value and not trying to do the stuff that my team is supposed to be doing, et cetera? And this was so vitally important. In fact, I'm going to talk to you about, after I talk about this what of these roles, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my how. But all of that started from that discussion with my niece in middle school. So after that, understanding the value that I brought, because I was leading a technical team, and my background is not highly technical. Like I didn't come back up through a developer or anything like that. So it began to say, okay, when I'm on these calls, what value am I going to add? And I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about that. So that was amazing. Understanding that, making sure I'm standing in that. Now from there, this is where I would say my career took the hardest turn. And I say hardest as more, it kind of went completely different to where it was. So I'm sitting in my office one day, and at this point I had my team for about 6 years. Everything was going well. We had done a ton of improvement. At one point I had like the development side of the house, and then I had the project side of the house, and then they had combined both under me. So everything was going well. But I had been there for about 6 years between the whole teams, and I knew it was time to do something else. And I kind of looked around and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. So I spoke to a colleague of mine that I trusted and just said, man, help me think through some of this stuff. And in that discussion, I started talking about my love of leadership development, which I was doing personally, like through my church, or I was on a couple nonprofit boards. I would help them. But I had never dreamed of doing it in work because my background is IT. So I'm having this conversation. As fate would have it, they were putting together leadership development at the company that I was at. And so I took a hard left and went into leadership development, and which seemed crazy on paper and real life because, I was on this kind of leadership journey, right? I had a team at the time of about 40 people. And I was going into this leadership development where I didn't have any background or training. I was going from having a team to not having a team. I was going, again, from having this big context and understanding IT systems in IT to working in HR with people who had done this their entire careers. And people told me point blank, like, you're not gonna progress in leadership as quickly if you take this route. And for me, though, I was okay with that. And that's what was interesting is because when you're intentional about the delay, it's okay. So I was intentional about my delay. I said, you know what? It doesn't matter if that means I don't have a team right now or whatever. I'm going to keep going down this path. So I did that for about 6 years. And it was so completely different than anything I had done. Yes, I didn't have a team, but I was able to get my executive coaching certification. That's when I began teaching these classes all over the world. I still just had this amazing love for this work. And so it was going along well. And again, I'm 6 years into it. And what I noticed at that point was, while I loved what I did, they were using a very narrow set of my skills. So I said to myself, okay, is this where I want to peak? And myself said back to me, no, you are not done. Like, even though you love this work, this is not the end of the story. So how do we continue? So At that point, I started looking at other roles. And so this is the point that I was transitioning into Humana. But quite frankly, I reached out to Humana more looking at learning and development roles because I had kind of felt like, yes, I enjoy IT. I love the logic and the process side of it. But I'm teaching classes now. This is kind of what I'm doing. And but I'd reached out to a colleague of mine that I worked at in my previous company, and she was like, yeah, you can do some of that stuff in IT. Just come back to IT. And I was like, no, no, I've transitioned, right? I'm doing something different. But she was like, no, and she sent me a job in IT. And so out of, I would say, because you never want to burn a bridge. That's a good note to learn. You never want to burn a bridge. So I met with the people. And what was interesting to me was when I started having meetings, it immediately felt like home. And I can't describe it any other way than just that I understand the mentality of the technology space. And while I enjoyed that other work, it really felt like not only, man, this is great, these are my people again, it also felt like this role was the best combination of all of my skills that I had kind of built up over time. So now I'm in this this enterprise transformation role. And my large takeaway in this role is, how do I lead leaders? So it's one thing to be a leader and understand your value, but it's another thing when I'm leading people who also have teams, because now it's more about setting the vision and less about kind of that technical work. So a couple of things. I know I kind of went through that pretty quickly, but I want you to think through these roles that I had. And while the majority of them were in IT, they weren't highly technical roles, right? So the majority of them were more on what I would say is the people and process side of IT, which is really important because no matter how amazing the technology is, if we don't have the proper processes around them, then we're not going to get the value out of them. So again, what I meant when I mentioned the reason I wanted to take you through that career journey was because when you think of a technical role, or when you think of these roles in STEM, sometimes it's not always about just the development work. And again, if that's something that you're passionate about, then certainly there are those opportunities. But they're all these things kind of wrapped around the technology that need to work well together in order to cause success. And so there are tons of opportunities for people who can think in that kind of technical way without having to necessarily be hands on keyboard. So I wanted to kind of share that journey with you. So that's kind of my what about those roles. Then interestingly, I'll go back to my middle school niece. What I discerned over that time was also my how. So one of my favorite questions that I love to ask people is, what is your superpower? And the reason I like to ask people this is because, one, people usually are a little bit taken back by it because they're like, what superpower? What are you talking about? But it is my belief, and I've seen it in real life, that everyone does something uniquely different and better than most people around them. Here's the thing though, because it's your superpower, you probably don't recognize it because you're just like, doesn't everybody do this? And the answer is no, everybody doesn't do it. So what I began to develop or learn about me as I got through these classes or these roles were, what is my superpower? And then so I've summarized them in the three. So that first superpower is, I think of everything in process. Like literally, it doesn't matter if I'm at work, if I'm in line at the grocery store, or I'm in church. I have a funny communion story. So I'm sitting in communion one day, we're in church, and I'm watching this, and I'm watching the process, and they're doing the whole communion thing. And I lean to the lady next to me and I tell them, we could probably do this in like half the time. Like, what are we doing here? And the lady leans back to me and says, that's not really the point. right? But my point is that I think of everything in process. So I think of everything. How do things work? How do things, what slows down a process? What adds to a process? All of these things. And that's how I can help people, because sometimes when people are in the weeds, they don't understand. They just know it's not working. So I can come in and do that. The second one is the middle one, is I do a lot of what I call bringing calm to chaos. So whether it's on outage calls or if systems are down, I can kind of come in and say, well, what's our North Star? How do I bring everyone together to get the technical people, make sure they're focused at the right place? So that's one of the things I do. A second thing, kind of in that similar vein, is what I sometimes, like, my team will come to me and say, hey, here's this big problem. I'm able to kind of take all of that information and to distill it down into, okay, what should we do about it now? So getting that large information into action. And again, this is not something that everyone can do. And then the last one is around coaching. So this is more around my leadership style, because everyone who has a team is not a leader. I'm sure you guys have seen this in action. But so my leadership is more through, hey, how do you really develop the team and coach them versus just kind of command and control and make them do certain things. So if I think about a couple of things that I'd love for you to take away. First, when you think about technology and STEM, think about it more broadly than just things that are kind of hard technical things. But then also, what are the supports that are around that technology that, again, may be opportunities for you to do? Secondly, make sure that as you are going about these things, that you're taking learnings, whether it's a class or an internship. You should be able to reflect on that thing and say, man, what did I learn? And sometimes what you learned is something that was amazing. I love this and I'd love to do this again. Or sometimes, quite frankly, the learning is I don't ever want to do this again in my life. But a learning is a learning, right? So that's the second one. And then the last one, and I would say the most important one, is find your superpower. Find out what you do uniquely well, better than most people, and then make sure you show up every day in that superpower, because that is when magic happens. And that's when it's less important about the what. The what is great, but when you are doing your how and you're doing it in a way that's amazing to other people, that's when magic happens. And whether that's in STEM or whether that's in other fields, that is when truly things begin to happen. So as you think through kind of, man, what are some opportunities or what are some ways there, keep an open mind. Because what I've found in my background is STEM and this kind of ways of thinking through technology is in some ways more of a mindset and a how than particularly what department I happen to be aligned to. So with that, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I think they shared my LinkedIn details. Feel free to drop any questions that you have, or feel free to drop me a note on LinkedIn, and I'd love to connect with you and share any of my experiences. So I will pass it back.
Thank you so much, Keturah, for that inspiring and empowering conversation. I know that I was inspired and empowered, and looking at the chat, I think a lot of other people were. I'm going to take just a few moments to introduce our next video segment. If you are interested in asking more questions to Keturah, she will be joining us for the Women in STEM panel, so be sure to put those questions in chat to be answered then. Up next, we're going to be watching a video honoring Diane Green, but I want to give you some history about what this video is going to be showing. Anita Borg was an American computer scientist who founded the Institute for Women in Technology, as well as the Grace Hopper Celebration of Women in Computing, the inspiration for the creation of this program. In 1987, computer scientist Dr. Anita Borg started the digital community Sisters for Women in Computing. In 1994, she co-founded the Grace Hopper Celebration, which has grown to become the world's largest annual gathering of women technologists, featuring keynote speakers, workshops, and awards. We're going to take a moment and watch a brief video of Diane Green, the former CEO of Google Cloud, while she is receiving the 2017 ABE Award for Technical Leadership from the Anita Borg Institute as one of the most iconic technology leaders of the last 20 years. Show Diane and Anita some love in the chat. And here's the video.
Shamika, it still hasn't started from my side.
So, was the video playing for everybody?
Sounds like it might be something.
Yes, great.
Okay.
Yeah, if you pick, you have to hit play.
And if it doesn't work for some people, we'll also put the link in the chat for you guys.
Thanks.
Wow, she's definitely inspiring as well. So we had some questions that were submitted earlier, and I know that they're going to be placed into chat as well. We want to go ahead and discuss the questions in chat. For time and logistics sake, we are going to keep it to chat rather than have people come off mute, but we definitely want to hear from all of you and hear your insights and your thoughts. So here are our discussion questions. In fact, not even are they're not in chat, they're on the screen, so it's even easier to read. Diane mentioned she found it's fun where there's diversity at work and enjoys when there's humor and interaction. What are other benefits of a diverse environment? And I loved that she tied the fact that you could have more fun when there's more diversity. That's really true. And I don't think I'd ever particularly noticed that. So what are your thoughts about that? Put those in chat, and what do you think other benefits of a diverse environment are? Oh, come on, don't be so quiet. Let me hear you typing. Creativity. Thanks, Adrienne. More diverse ideas, Candace. Great. Katherine, we think better when we think differently. Innovation from Della. Absolutely. These are all definitely benefits of a diverse environment. Various unique solutions from Hannah. Thank you. Different points of view. WandaJean. Absolutely. And Keturah, perspectives you never would have come up with. And Jamaica, no offense to any men joining us, but we get more preservatives beyond just one perspectives beyond just one viewpoint. Absolutely. Support is nice when it comes to tough social situations. And when you have more diversity, then you have different levels of support and people who understand different things. So yeah, a stronger support system, seeing that come in from Mariah and Madison, or Brooke rather, sorry. So a lot of really great comments in here, and having different perspectives is so key to having an innovative and supportive workplace that everyone can feel a part of. So I'm going to move us on to our next question. Diane talked about being the only girl in her classes and as a minority at work. Have you ever experienced being the only in the room? How did that impact you? Were there pros to it? What were the cons? Were you able to find allies to connect with or support you? I know as a woman, I've definitely been, if not the only, then one of the few in different rooms throughout my life within IT. And even I started in the music business, even in the music industry. When you're working behind the scenes, it's a lot of men. Oh, Candace, you felt like you stood out like a big old zit. See, Brooke, yes, you were the only and youngest. Oh, that's always hard. And notice the change in respect in group projects as the semester went by. And that's good. They recognized that they needed to move past their initial implicit bias, right? Keturah, you said you found there are times that you notice more than others. That's interesting. So sometimes it makes more of a difference than other times. Katherine, you're right. Almost never align at the women's room at a big tech conference. But if you go to a learning conference, totally different. Yamini, being the only often makes you feel unsure if you're doing something. However, if you're around a good support system, that's all you need to reach your maximum potential. That's a great point. I love that. And Jamaica, being a vertically challenged woman, I look much younger than I really am, so I often find I'm not taken as seriously or valued as much. And it kind of goes back to one of the previous comments about age. There's so many different ways that bias rears its head. And Hannah, I love it's extremely hard to get thoughts and viewpoints to catch in these groups, even when they seem viable for discussion. Sometimes you have to have another person who's part of the majority second your thought or idea. A lot of really, really great comments coming in through chat. Keep them coming. Katherine, you're right. Allies are huge in overcoming implicit bias. And totally, totally important, Candace. You can be mentored by anyone younger or older than you. So I'm going to go ahead and take us over. Oh, Keisha, you find yourself seeking out activities, groups, talks where there are other women speakers and mentors. And that's a great thing to do. And that helps support those avenues. So I'm going to take us on to our third and final question. During the video, they talked about her being mission driven, but also very focused on helping people along the way. Have you had someone help you along your path in STEM? If so, how and what did it mean to you? And maybe there have been more than one person who have helped you. So if you had people who have helped you along your way, and I'm gonna open that question a little further. How have you maybe helped someone along their way? How have you not only received that help, but then how have you paid it back or paid it forward? Oh, WandaJean, so hard that you didn't have anyone helping you, but so good that you are helping others. Thank you. And Katherine, oh, that's great that you had an outstanding mentor who broke down barriers. So were they someone who was in a majority? I'm curious. Yeah. And Keisha, that's so great to hear that you found so many amazing and supportive women in your career, which I count you among the amazing and supportive women I know in my career. You and Candace and Adrian, I'm very privileged at Keturah to work with all of you. So way to go. And it's so exciting to see all the women on this call and all of the different women who are sharing their ideas, and know that you're all part of this tech community that I'm part of. Oh, Candace, I love that your parents never told you that you couldn't do it. And that, you're right, that is the help you needed. Knowing that you can, like getting that message. Hannah, okay, you've had 2 female professors and teachers who've both really helped push you towards STEM and realize your passions. That teachers are so amazing. And Keturah, I love that, being able to mentor others to pass on the great feeling and support that you had as you developed. So I know that we need to move on to our panel. So Jamaica, I think it is up for you at this point.
And you guys, can still continue answering questions in the chat for these discussion questions. But yes, thank you so much, Teresa, for facilitating our discussion. But I will ask that all of our 4 panelists turn their cameras on. We'll get ready for our Women in STEM panel. So I'm very excited. Not only do we get to hear from Keturah again, but we get to hear from 3 more amazing women in STEM. So we have Keturah Jenkins, Humana's IT Director of Enterprise Transformation, Dr. WandaJean Jones, GE Healthcare Global Learning Logistics Technical and Data Specialist. We have Katherine Stevenson, U of L's very own Executive Director of Enterprise Technology Services. And we have Alexus Maddox, a University of Louisville student who's majoring in accounting and computer information systems as a double major with a track in information security. So show them some love. And so after we hear from our speakers, we will have our Q&A, which will include some of the pre-submitted questions that you've shared during registration. But please, during the program, put questions in the chat. And while we may not be able to answer all of your questions, we will try to get to as many as we can. So, first question is, what are you currently doing in your STEM career, or what do you aspire to do?
Currently, one thing that I aspire to do is that I'm really interested in the defense side of cybersecurity. So I'm also interested in forensic accounting in a way where those two, the IT parts, really collide. So what I'm currently doing is just doing a lot of research in how the different viewpoints and how every company operates in different ways on approaching cybersecurity from the defense side. And I'm also taking my classes and just looking at multiple different wonderful opportunities, such as the Grace Hopper celebration, because there's so many wonderful opportunities and people that you can connect with and talk to.
That's awesome. About a third of what I do is cybersecurity operations for the University of Louisville. Blue teamers are hard to find. Everybody wants to be the red team. So really thrilled to hear you're working on the defensive side of things. That's a seriously important skill set. So I do data centers, I do cloud, and I do cybersecurity. That's the big 3 that I take care of for U of L. My future aspirations are a CISO role, Chief Information Security Officer, and before I'm done, I think I'd like to be a CIO somewhere.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I'm already inspired by both of you. I've been spending my time at work doing more automation, so low code, no code business automation and what I call making little digital twins of people so that we stop doing so much administrative work and really rise to higher purpose work, which is usually with people. But outside of work, I love that I have an opportunity to give back to the early childhood space where I've created a program and developed curriculum for daycare and early care workers to introduce STEM in the classroom for babies that are 6 weeks to 5 years old. And this is training that's much needed, but sometimes it can't be afforded by the people, especially in the minority childcare settings. So my team is making that at a very low or no cost way. So really excited about bringing up a bunch of babies that love STEM.
That is awesome. So WandaJean and I work together, and no matter when I talk to WandaJean, I always feel like a slacker because she's always doing amazing things. Like no matter when I talk to her, so that's awesome, WandaJean. So my team right now, my team is called the Working Differently team because we are on this learning journey to DevOps within Humana. And what we found is that it's not only about introducing new tools, it is introducing new ways of working. So my team really kind of goes into those teams and say, hey, don't only use this technology, but here's a different way you can work to leverage this technology. So I love it because it's around kind of unlocking the power of the tools through the people and process side. In terms of where I want to go, I would say I've primarily worked in corporate functions before, and I'm really looking to do something closer to a business segment because no matter how much you know and understand at that corporate side, understanding how that business makes money and getting closer to your customer is going to give you an amazing perspective. So that's probably what I'm looking to do next to kind of continue to round out my experience. So whether that be continuing to support in an IT capacity, but just closer to that segment or business, or in some other capacity.
I'll also add to mine that I am just furiously going through this book that I got on Amazon. It's called Whose Life Is It Anyway? And Keturah.
Thank you, Wanda.
you just continue to bless me. I was like, she's all in my house now, guiding guiding everything that I do here. Whose life is it anyway? I'm trying to find my own life. So I love that book.
Well, that is sweet of you, but that's really what the whole point of all of this is, right? It's like we all have a story, but we have to write that story. So even when you look at this whole thing about STEM, you can be the version of STEM that works for you. It doesn't have to just follow someone else's footsteps. Sometimes you can create your own path. You are silly though. Thank you.
Thank you. And to all of our attendees, even though I'm asking these questions to our amazing panelists, please feel free to answer them yourselves because we're all a part of this conversation. And so my next question, so I know for me, when I've always loved technology, like I swear if I went to Japan, I would go nuts. But I did not have anything in grade school that would have inspired me to even think about going down the path towards technology. But what inspired you to get into STEM and what experiences got you there?
I can go for this one. I don't know that I was inspired to get into STEM, but it kind of goes back to what Professor Jenkins was talking about earlier when she said, what is your superpower? That's the same question I ask people, by the way. And I just remember my mother saying, WandaJean, you are so lazy. And she would tell me to go do chores and tell everybody else to go, and I would be back ready to play. What are you doing here? I'm already finished with my chores. So how did you get finished so fast? And so she would tell me that I was lazy because I would find the fastest way of doing things. Well, that seems to be something that is pretty valuable in the business world. If you're getting paid a gazillion amounts of money, the company doesn't want you to take a long time doing it. So I think that is what made me know that I'm a person who can see a bigger picture and see a better process and really corral people to get into this better process. And I usually am a very big evangelist when it comes to change and with these sorts of things. So.
I was inspired to do STEM whenever I was in high school. I remember I started out in graphic design and I was like, oh, this is interesting. But then I did a programming class and it was just like amazing. And I just found it so interesting how I could like create apps and everything through code. So I did that and then I got to the cybersecurity track because I was just in my senior year and I was thinking about careers and major choices as I was getting ready for college. And I was like, okay, well, I love computer science, but how can I, like what Keturah said, how can I like use this job to also do what I love? And one of the things that I love is helping others. So I was like, okay, what part of computer science helps others the most? And I chose cybersecurity because I wanted to help others be protected from having their personal information manipulated in any type of way or from their computers being hacked into and things like that. So I just really love that process and learning about cybersecurity so I can like make society and my community a better place. And I love telling others about cybersecurity and STEM overall and how it can really impact their lives and that it's just a wonderful field to be in.
That's a hard one to follow. I was the science nerd all the way through elementary school, wanted to be an astronaut, wanted to be a scientist, play with test tubes, anything I could do on that. And then my parents gave me a computer when I was in middle school, an old Commodore 64 of all things. And I taught myself how to program it because I didn't just want to play the video games on it. I mean, that was fun, but I wanted to understand how the video game worked and how did someone make it do that. And then that was a short step from, well, the person that wrote this program expects me to do this. What if I do this other thing instead? What happens? And I started breaking computers, which quickly turned into what we now might call low-key hacking of computers. And that got me into cybersecurity, only we didn't call it that just yet. I definitely started out when it was much more of an information security field.
That's awesome. So mine, I was a pre-med major in college, and I was so hardcore pre-med that I took my senior pictures in high school in scrubs with a stethoscope, and I used to sign my name MD. Like that, I was all in. I was all in. And so I got to college, and I went to a college who they had a great pre-med program. And I was doing it and I was doing well, but I did not love it. And this is the time when, ER was a thing, like the medical drama ER, and like all the pre-med students would all want to watch ER. And I was looking at that like, I don't want to do that. Like, y'all don't sleep. Like, this is not fun. But I was at a loss because I was pre-med forever. So I did not know what I wanted to do. So I transferred to the business school because I felt like it was more of a general, I wanted to keep going. I didn't want to stop, but I was trying to figure it out. So I went to business school, and one day I got to find this person one day. I was sitting in the main business building, and I was looking at the pamphlet around all the business majors, and somebody said, you're pretty good technically and good with computers. You should do an MIS degree. And I was like, okay. Like that was the big decision. And as I got into it more and more, I was just like, man, I enjoy this stuff. And I love understanding the logic behind it. And I love understanding, like, I have this problem. Here's a way that I can fix it in a repeatable way. Or so for me, it was very It wasn't something that I necessarily loved growing up, but somebody, and I to this day can't even remember who that person is, said to me like, man, you're a pretty logical thinker, and you are, you tend to help us when we have a computer question. You should think about this thing. And then from there, I just loved it. And I think, to me, that's the power of testing things out, test and learn. Babies do it and we forget as adults. But like, babies will bang on stuff and be like, oh, that broke that. Let's not do that again. Or let's do it again because they want to do it again. But so like, testing it was how I learned that I loved it.
Awesome. There's a couple things I definitely want to share from the chat, especially those who will later be watching from YouTube. You're not going to be able to see this amazing chat we got going on. But we had someone share, I was actually discouraged from being an engineer in school starting in 4th grade a lot. But when I moved away from Eastern Kentucky, I haven't had as many comments. The discouragement is what inspired me. And then, as someone who has loved superheroes growing up, pursuing a career in it allows me to fulfill that dream of being Wonder Woman or Batman, but in a different way. And
I love that.
My dad tried to get me interested in using computers when I was 8, but I wanted to read. It just took me another 10 years. So, and for me, I didn't have college-educated professional family members, so I learned from TV. I had 2 choices, med school or law school. I never even knew any of these IT tech jobs existed until it was too late for school. And I got into IT because the guys told me there was no room for women in computers. I just had to prove them wrong. Awesome. I love proving people wrong too. All right. So next question, and it's kind of a bit of a 2-parter. But what challenges, and also what opportunities did you have while pursuing your education and or while pursuing your career? And for the challenges, how did you overcome them? So a positive and a negative.
Let's see. It's a couple of my professors are attending this. My undergraduate career is a rather checkered thing because I wanted to learn all the things and wanted to learn, and my attention span's kind of short. So that's not a good combination for a high GPA, but I ended up powering through that, though I actually ended up getting a degree in Japanese studies, so go figure. Yeah, that left field there.
That's awesome.
What I've ended up doing to compensate for that, and it works out pretty well in a tech-heavy field, is because the field reinvents itself so very frequently, there are some pretty much ironclad computing fundamentals that haven't changed all that much since Admiral Hopper's days. But a lot of how you apply those is new every 3, 5, 7 years. So I'm a natural lifelong learner, and I enjoy learning. So it's not unusual to see me spending vacation time with a tech book trying to learn a new thing or figure out a new technology, because I can see down the road it's coming and it's going to be relevant to U of L. And I'd like to get ahead of it so that it doesn't just appear one day and, oh my goodness, we have to figure out how we're going to deal with it. I've already got at least some idea of how it's applicable to the organization and can start helping the rest of the team skill up and get educated on it.
Wow. I have an interesting story, and I tell people all the time that if you keep going, you can make it. I had a conflict. I always knew when I was in, some people call this weird, but I always knew when I was a little girl, I'm one of 9 children, and I always wanted to one-up my mother. So when I was 10, I would walk around and say, Mom, I'm going to have 10 kids. But I also happened to love, technology, and I loved computers, and we had these big giant Macintosh computers at school with the floppy disks. And so I really didn't have that career coach that could say, okay, WandaJean, if you want to do this and this, do they match? Can you do both? So after high school, I went to Shawnee Aviation High School, and then you get a pilot's license when you graduate. I was in the avionics program, and I got a full ride to the JB Speed School for Engineering, and I was going into electronics engineering, and I flunked out in the first semester. I was not used to being in large classrooms. I didn't have the network around me, and I lost my scholarship, and I was one of the first of my 9 siblings to go to school, and I was the smart person. So it was so embarrassing, and I said, I've got to try again. And so I went to the Navy. So I became a sailor in the Naval Nuclear Power Program, and I said, I'm going to find a way to pay for college again. And so that did not work out either all the way. So I only spent 2 years in the Navy, but I kept going. And I ended up getting married, and I was going to have these 10 kids. So totally left my body open for reproduction for 8.5 years. I did it. And I didn't get the 10, but I did get the 7. But inside of having a family of 7 children, I started realizing that I didn't want to do hands-on electronics. I didn't want to repair things like I had learned. And I really couldn't if I was going to be pregnant so many times. So I ended up getting an associate's degree at ITT, Technical Institute. Anybody back in the day knew about ITT. And my first job was in Arizona at Intel. They came, they got me. I went on this big career of, corporations paying for my college. So I was blessed to come and get my bachelor's degree. I came back to Humana. Humana paid for my bachelor's and also paid for my master's degree. And then I hopped over to GE, who paid for my doctoral. So just being that lifelong learner got me going. But I really thought that I was going to be repairing jam cams and repairing things inside of a newsroom for the rest of my life with my hands, but I couldn't, because whenever this male-dominated field would see this big giant belly coming, they would be so terrified of me because, oh my gosh, she's pregnant again. So that was really tough, balancing career with, I knew I wanted to make 6 figures. I don't want to live in a life that I don't want to live in. And so a lot of this kept driving me to do more for my children. I don't want them to have excuses to say, I just couldn't do it. I didn't have any options, or I didn't have any chances. And I just live my life in a no excuse sort of way so that my 6 sons and my 1 daughter can, and her name is Alexus, spelled exactly like your name, Alexus, because I told my husband, he's always wanted the Lexus brand. I said, honey, you'll never be able to get your children in the Lexus. So here's your Alexus right here. But it was interesting, and it took me several years to figure out that this is the path, like Keturah said, the path is more of this helix, and it's creating this DNA of what is known as your leadership lifeline and who you are. And so that's how you know what you're worth, is wherever you've been, that's how you know what you're worth.
I love that. That's just amazing.
I told you every time. Every time.
So like one thing that I was really discouraged about within IT was that growing up like in high school, like from freshman year to senior year, I noticed that there wasn't a lot of students that were not only women, but there was not a lot of students that were diverse, or like, I guess like others that looked like myself. Mm-hmm. So it was very male dominated. And sometimes I felt like, as we are all like learning, sometimes I felt like, I was seen like as the girl that needed help. But the way how I definitely conquered that and got through that was that just continuing to think and also believe that everybody is learning. Everybody learns through their own path and their own journey. And whenever it comes down to really doing what you love, other people's opinions about yourself should not matter as long as you know that you are doing your best and that you know that you are striving to make a wonderful impact within, whether it's in the classroom, within a company, or wherever you are. Just always be yourself. So that's what I did, and I'm like now in college, and I just like love cybersecurity, and I feel like understanding these aspects has made me love learning about cybersecurity even more, because not only am I learning cybersecurity, but I'm learning it at how it can work for me and how it's just a wonderful opportunity for myself, because I don't have to worry about other people's negative opinions.
That is great, Alexus.
Thank you.
So my challenge came right after school, and I could not find a job at all. And I graduated right when I came out. I came out in 2000, which was when like one of the IT bubbles burst. It's like right before then, everyone was going out and web was a big thing. So people were like leaving college without degrees and making six figures. It was just insane. And then, all that evaporated right as I came out of school. And even though I had, an impressive GPA, I did internships, and like 20 years ago, everybody didn't do internships like you guys have to do now. So I had a pretty good resume and couldn't find anything. And so I was working like temp jobs. I was typing, I was just doing whatever because I needed to support myself. And I got a temp job at Toyota, the manufacturing company, the manufacturing arm. And they were, because I had an IT background, they let me manage their database. But I was managing a database and making flight arrangements. Like I was the admin, but I would, they were just like, okay. And one day this guy stops me, and I was getting kind of discouraged because I was like, man, I did what I was supposed to do. I have this degree and here I am making flight arrangements. And so I remember one day I was in the hallway and this guy stops me in the hall and he says, now, what is your degree in? Because, this is not, you should be doing something else. And because he saw that even though I was doing something that I was overqualified for, I was doing it with a good attitude and I was showing up every day and doing what I needed to do. He took my resume and gave it to his wife, who recruited interns at GE. And his wife hired me that night, but she hired me into an intern program. So I went from, at Toyota, I was still a temp person, but it was kind of a long-term temp thing. And I went into a 3-month program. So it was kind of a juggle because they could have, after 3 months, said goodbye and I would have been looking for a job again. But I really felt like it was a good opportunity to start to get my foot in the door. And I ended up spending 17 years at GE. But to me, it was about like, when you have those setbacks, of how do you continue to find some progress, and whatever your hand finds to do it well, because you never know who's looking and you never know where that opportunity comes. And you're not doing it for the opportunity, but because when they know that is who you are, then opportunities can kind of come about. That because it was him sticking his neck out or his wife sticking her neck out to say, hey, we don't even really know her, but from what I've observed, she would be good at this. So that was tough for me, though, to graduate with like a 3.9 and not find a job in my field for so long. And to really feel like, what else can I have to do? But in the end, it led to an amazing kind of career and trajectory that I could not have even imagined. So what felt like a setback at the beginning actually turned out to be a huge blessing.
Now, I know some of you guys talked about this a little bit, but how has your identity shaped your overall experience in STEM?
I have a couple of perspectives. This year, I was celebrated for being the first African American learning management leader for GE Healthcare, and I could have taken this a couple of ways, but it's really put me on a mission because I want to know, what are we doing to open this door for other people of color to come in? It doesn't, I mean, it's not enough to say, okay, what are we doing for just African Americans? I want to know people of color in general. I want to know more females. This has to become more diverse if this is going to get better for any of us. So I'm really empowered, and I'm challenging my team. And I say, wait a minute, wait, everybody look around. Somebody's missing. Everybody looks exactly the same. And so like Keturah said, sometimes you're the only one that notices, and it's you get to the table, you get a voice, you get an opportunity to say something. So you do say something, and not only do you say something, but you do something. So giving back and, you know, doing your part, because just like with you, Keturah, there was someone who said, wait a minute, I'm going to give you a chance when no one else would give you a chance. I'm going to give you a chance. There's always that person that brings you in and gives you that chance. And I'm very, very grateful, and I don't despise the day of small things. So if you get to that point, you can have a voice.
I would say regarding my identity in STEM, one thing that I have realized, not only that I am enough, but as I will be walking into the corporate field, I will be a woman, and I will be an African American woman. And I feel like, yeah, there may be some barriers, but I feel like, you know, you just like, there will be multiple opportunities, and there will be multiple things to conquer. And one thing that I would say is that I really, like, one of the main reasons that I come every chance I get to be able to talk to other students at the Grace Hopper celebration is because I want to let those other students know that yes, it is possible that you can be a participant in Grace Hopper, and to not worry about finances at all, because when I went to Grace Hopper, I was able to get a full ride. And moreover, I just want to reach out to those students, those diverse students, those students that are women, that are interested in STEM, and to be that person where they can ask questions anytime they need to, whether if it's filling out the application, what it's like being in Grace Hopper, or what it's like just traveling for the first time, just as a networking opportunity. So then to let however many students know that within this call, it is possible, you can do it. And if you need like anything, or like need to ask anything, you can definitely reach out to me. And yeah.
That is great. So for me, it kind of goes to that superpower question, because at some point early in my IT career, I found myself kind of trying to pretend to be more technical than I was. And like I remember sitting in meetings going, I hope they don't ask me. I hope they don't ask me. I hope that, how can I fake my way through this answer? And at a certain point, I just embraced, I am the process person. Like, I don't have to know the technical solution, and that's okay. And when I started to embrace that, then I didn't have to go to those meetings afraid, because I was standing up to say, look, this is what I don't know. Let me tell you what I do know. And it automatically, then I could be adding my value there. But while I was hiding because I felt like I wasn't technical enough, then I wasn't stepping into adding the value that I could. So that's how it feels like I've matured over the last bit, just to be able to say, you know, I don't have to be the person who's, you know, putting together servers on the weekend. Like, I have peers who do that and love it and have all of these amazing technical things in their homes. And I can say, great job. You want to come over and do mine? Because that's not my testimony. But I can do that and feel okay with it. And when that happened, it was just like a big weight dropped from me. And now it feels so great to just be able to come and they'll start talking. I'll be like, what's that? I don't know what that is. And they explain it to me. And they also know that, you know what, they don't do process and they don't have the people experience and the coaching experience that I do. So they come and ask me for that. So it really helps us to come together to be better than the sum of our parts, because I'm no longer pretending to try to be like them.
So identity is an interesting one for me because I'm a midlife transitioner from male to female. So I spent the majority of my career being read by my peers and everyone I interacted with as a guy, and got all the bennies that came along with that, all the little, you can be aggressive in a meeting and no one gets after you about it. No one looks down on you for it. You can speak your mind and be super forthright. Transitioning was an eye-opener in lots of ways. Now, I transitioned at U of L, so most of the people that I work with, they've known me for 15, 20 years, and they still treat me the same way because, okay, yeah, she's that way. She always has been. But when I go to other places and interact with other people who haven't known me, I start to feel it, start to see it. And the first time was whoa, I academically knew all this, but a little different to actually feel it. And I actually, right after I came out, I had a very trusted colleague take me aside, and she asked me with deadly earnestness, "Aren't you worried you're trashing your career by doing this?" Because she just couldn't see a path to the upper levels of leadership for a woman, even though she's a very accomplished technology professional herself. And that's what convinced me that something is seriously wrong in the way IT recruits and the way that IT hires. So I've doubled and tripled down on insisting on trying to make sure we do everything we can to have a diversity of applicants, and we interview people. We don't just say, nah, they're a little light on this experience, we're going to skip them, because that just doesn't work. Great fun. You want to watch a tech interview come to a crashing halt, just casually toss a diversity, equity, and inclusion question in the middle of it. I always point out that the IT industry is overwhelmingly male, overwhelmingly white, and overwhelmingly straight. And it really doesn't have to be that way, but it's up to hiring managers like me to make sure that it's not. Oh yeah, someone in the chat's asking about when vendors call now. I get talked down to by vendors all the time now. I get mistaken for my dead name's assistant. And I got no time for that.
Wow.
No time at all.
You get to see both sides of things. Wow.
Yeah, many times I'd come home complaining about something, my wife would look at me to say,
So before we get to, closing and prizes, I have one last question, and it's a two-parter. Where's my question? So what is the greatest piece of advice you have received? And to those who are thinking about pursuing, maybe getting ready to graduate and go into the quote unquote real world and try to find a job in STEM, what advice would you give to them?
Well, I'd like to jump in on this one since I've been doing some hiring lately and just been really dismayed at the last 2 rounds of hiring I've done. I had no women in the applicant pool, and that's just tough. What I have noticed, however, is when women apply for tech jobs, in my experience, they very carefully tie their resume to every single requirement that's listed in the job description. It's very obvious how they're a fit for what's published as the job requirements. Men don't worry about that, ladies. Men will apply for jobs they don't meet all the qualifications for because they figure I'm going to get the interview and I can talk my way in. So my advice is stretch. I mean, don't defraud, but apply for that stretch position. So what if you don't meet every last requirement, but you got most of them? Apply for it. You will never get a job you don't apply for.
You're still on mute, Alexus.
Oh, sorry. I was saying absolutely, and I was sorry, to not be afraid to take a chance and also to consider being ahead of the game. Like if you know that you are interested in a certain field after college, don't be afraid to look up those certifications and see, okay, what are different things that are going to be within those tests or those exams, such as, for an example, the Security Plus exam, or if you're interested in math or accounting, the CPA exam, so you can be prepared. And also, there's no saying that you have to like prepare for those tests whenever you're about to graduate. You could prepare and study that content and look at it and everything before then and actually be prepared right when you're about to graduate. So then you're ahead of the game. You understand what's going on. And then my third thing would be to definitely take advantage of your calendar on your phone if you have an agenda, to make sure that you're able to remember everything and to make sure that you're able to keep up with everything. Because a lot of people, we all have a lot of things going on within our lives. So sometimes it can be hard to remember some things, but I feel like using a calendar and agenda can definitely help and can be very useful within the business world.
It's good. I'll jump in.
Can I go next?
Of course, WandaJean.
No,
you can go first because you
go
got
ahead.
8 kids. So
You No, you go ahead. You go ahead. No, I really did want to go next. I really did want to go next because I wanted you to be last. You started us. You should finish us. I think the biggest advice I have for people is one: if you don't know what LinkedIn is, find out, and then get LinkedIn. So I didn't say this, but I have an uncle who is, he just says things and everybody, it's just right when he does it. He says, with all of the things that you would have written on Facebook, if you had to just get on that LinkedIn, so he called it LinkedIn, but he even knew that LinkedIn is a place where if you want to get somewhere in your career, get with that 6 degrees, find out who knows who, and that is what's going to get you your next role. And if you're not able to connect to people, you may miss your opportunity.
I love that. In fact, my last job I got from LinkedIn. It was a connection. It was someone I had not spoken to for like 7 years. And I reached out to her on LinkedIn. And I remember feeling a little bit, because I was like, man, I haven't talked to her in so long. And she ended up connecting me, right? So it's that creating that network, whether it's a virtual network or in-person network, is so critical. So I love that point. I was going to mention kind of test it out. So sometimes career choices feel huge. Like, I've got to choose this thing and I'm going to be doing this thing the rest of my life. Guess what? No, you're not. Like, you're not going to be doing it the rest of your life. Or if you want to do it the rest of your life, you can keep doing it the rest of your life. But if you get into it and you don't like it, you can do something else. So I would say, more than, having this fear or concern of preventing you from going out there, go out and do something. Maybe you'll either learn something about it that you like that you didn't expect, or you'll make a connection with someone, or you'll get in with a great company. So I would say don't waste time looking for what you think perfect might be on paper, because it's really about building those experiences, and building that network. And you can only do that when you're actually in the game, versus kind of watching it, trying to make judgment from the sidelines.
Well, thank you all so much. I mean, the questions that we got beforehand, like, I was like, there's no way we can get through all these great questions. But I mean, just hearing all of your all's different paths and the advice that you have given, I know that everyone attending and who will later be watching will get a lot of wealth of information. And I hope, those who may have been a little hesitant or, thought, oh, this is not for me, or there's no one who looks like me. Why don't you be, no one likes to sometimes be the first, but sometimes you got to be the first. And so definitely step out of those comfort zones. So I'm going to ask my speakers to turn their cameras off for right now, and then we'll turn them back on for our group photo, but I'm going to get ready to do some prizes. All righty. So again, thank you to all of our attendees for your great questions and your feedback throughout the program. And like I mentioned earlier, we're really excited about the prizes we have this year. So whenever I call your name, of course, if you're comfortable, I know some people probably like, it's 7:30, I might not be looking my best right now. Just give us a little shout out. So for our first gift, a prize, we will have our gift basket of goodies from Louisville Speed School of Engineering. So big woohoo to Speed School. And the winner of this is Jade Brown. Are you still with us, Jade? Let's see if she's still with us. I think she is. So I will reach out. So all of our winners, I'll be reaching out to you afterwards and telling you what instructions to do for your prizes. So congratulations to Jade. And so our next prize is a 1-year Rocket Women Commander membership, including all those perks like attending the free virtual events, discounted live events, networking. So definitely networking was a big topic here. And again, I'm just going to say this now. If I butcher anybody's names, my name's butchered all the time, so I apologize up front. But the winner is Yamini Polkum. Are you still with us, Yamini? Yay, congratulations. So I will be reaching out to you and connecting you to get that membership going. And then our last two prizes is our Rocket Women in Technology Conference, which will be May 18th through the 19th, and it will be held in person at the Galt House, of course, abiding by all COVID instructions. So we have two. We have first Brooke Ritz. Brooke, you still with us? And we have Nikita Sharma. So congratulations to all of our winners. I will be reaching out to you. So now I would love for everyone to turn their cameras on, get those beautiful smiles ready to go. We're going to take a group photo and I'm going to get our virtual room set up for that. Okay, so since obviously we can't be in person, I was like, we'll be like in a little classroom. So give people enough time to turn their cameras on. And I know how, sometimes there's that one person, the eyes closed, looking weird. So we'll take 2 photos to try to ensure we get everyone looking their best. All right, got a couple more popping on. Still people popping in. Wait a couple more seconds. All right, you guys ready? All right, 1, 2, 3. And 1, 2, 3. Again, thank you all so much for joining us tonight and from hearing from these amazing speakers, but also sharing your experiences. You really made this program what we dreamed it would be. And we hope that you got a lot out of it. We will be sending a link to the recording, but also the evaluation. So please fill that out to get feedback from you, what some of your key takeaways from this event. And feel free to share LinkedIn in the chat if you want to share that with others. And there will be an opportunity on the evaluation if you want to share your LinkedIn information to all who attended today. We'll be sharing that with those who opt in for that. So again, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your evening. I know some the JCPS goes on spring break next week. So if you got kids, good luck when they come back staying home. And thank you, and see you again next year.
Thank you, Jamaica.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.